You built the business. Now, build the man. This is the Ben Price experience.
Owen, thank you for
Yes,
being
sir.
here.
You're very welcome.
My first question is, to all my guests, is who are you and why are you here?
Pure light and love. I'm here to spread the love.
Lovely. And when did you come to that conclusion?
Maybe about, well, I guess as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, I was meditating and stuff. But in terms of maybe about 1997, I went through a very powerful personal development program called the Delphin Knowledge System, which ended up spending time in Sedona, Arizona with the Hopi Indians and the Mayan elders in the Yucatan and all that good stuff. So I went down that deep spiritual rabbit hole after being exposed to Tony Robbins. So Tony Robbins was 1996, and then 1997 was a whole spiritual journey.
What was it you did in 97?
97 was the Delphin Knowledge System, which involved 7 days in Sedona, Arizona with the Hopi Indians, and then another time we were in the Yucatan with the Mayan elders, and then another time we hired a large house in Hawaii, and we spent more time with the Hopi Indians there. So they
Wow.
taught me that every word we say, every deed we do, every thought we think, and every action we take affects the next 7 generations.
So what happened? Was it an initiation type experience or was it?
Well, I guess it was just a natural progression from Tony Robbins. Like Tony would be very much personal development, and then thereafter I was ready for personal empowerment, where instead of looking out for the answers, you look in. So it was just a natural progression after the Tony stuff.
What kind of processes did they take you through? What was the experience?
All sorts of things. So they actually did a fire walk without the rah-rah. They did a sweat lodge. They did a soul scree. So yeah, the Hopi Indians, really on top of their game when it comes to, where we're at as a species and where we can get to.
Yeah, amazing. So your main takeaway from that was what you just said: every thought, every word affects 7 generations.
Every deed, every action affects the next. So therefore, everything is sacred. So be conscious at all times what you do, even where you sit around a table. Everything it's all sacred. Everything is sacred, and everything has consequences.
Wow. What's your understanding of how that works, what that means, or is that such a big question?
I mean, I suppose it's one word. It's karma. Some people say karma's a bitch.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you come to the realization that we did some very powerful exercise where we actually melted in the earth. So we allowed Mother Earth to embrace us and to not be able to distinguish between me, the person, and Mother Earth, the energy. So almost like blended into that. But I've been on a constant journey of personal development. Like even during COVID, I spent an amazing 2 months, and then the next year 3 months in a biohacking place down in the south of Bali, and they had sensory deprivation tanks. They had cryotherapy, and we did a 12-day vipassana. And vipassana is it's 12 days of you don't speak, you just meditate, and you eat just a bowl of rice in the morning and some water. And so that was another interesting rabbit hole to go down, to be able to still your mind, to first of all acknowledge your thoughts, then understand your thoughts, observe them, and then eventually shut them down.
And what did you get out of that experience?
Just it's pure bliss when you can shut your monkey mind out. And then during the Vipassana, we did the sensory deprivation tank. Have you ever done sensory deprivation?
Maybe once, but not like...
Yeah, I think they call it flotation tank, but basically it is completely dark. It has zero light and zero sound. It's salt water, which is the exact same temperature as your body, and so you can't sink. You float on it. You go in naked. You float on your back, and you completely relax. And it's a very trippy experience. At one stage, things were so still that I felt the almost like ripples going from me to the edge of the tank back again. And I was saying to myself, well, hang on, I'm not moving. I'm not actually moving to create ripples. And then it was, no, these are not your ripples. These are your thoughts. So get the
Cool.
idea that, back to what we said earlier, every thought you think affects the next 7 generations.
Amazing. And so you said you've been meditating when you were 4 or 5.
Yeah, I remember I used to pull the covers over my head, and I used to start to do like a constant, like a monotone, and then I used to just go astral travel, like really wacky stuff. Like you became nothingness, you became no thing and no person, nobody. It was like the void, if you like.
Was that something you just figured out on your own, or do you have some guidance to?
As age 4, figured it out on my own, and then completely forgot about it as you do, and you go down, and then you end up back doing the work again, and you get reminded of it and say, oh yeah, that's what it was like to be.
When did that? So what did you do
So
from
from
the ages of?
I was born 1964, so let's say 1968, I was doing it myself, and then 1997, I got back in touch with that again. So what's that,
30
33
some
years?
years.
Yeah.
And what was that 30 years like? Were you just not in touch with spirituality at all?
Not at all. No, you know, just go to school, go to university, get a degree, do a job, get sucked into the matrix, if you like.
Yeah, yeah. What did you get? What job did you have? What degree did you go get?
So my degree was environmental science, and I ended up being a salmon farmer because people may not know this. Salmon are very sensitive to pollution, so they need pristine environments to thrive. So I did a summer job as a student between third and fourth year of degree, and they liked me so much they offered me a management position after I graduated. So I
Wow.
ran the place for 12 years.
Wow, amazing. How do you where do you think we went so awry? Because my understanding is throughout most of human history, we've had these kind of initiations and these ceremonies and this connection to nature. And where do you think it really went sideways? What
I
point in
think
time?
I mean, there's this, isn't there the famous saying, Ben, that, you know, hard times produce hard people create easy times create soft people. I think it's just a cycle, isn't it?
Right. You don't think there was a moment, there wasn't like an age where we kind of lost it, or was it always groups of people always separate from it?
Well, I think when we broke away from the idea of community, and you know, I would be from a very rural west of Ireland, rural place, so it's all about community. Like there's an Irish Gaelic word called the mehel, and the mehel is where you do everything together. So, for example, you know, there'd be 3 villages beside each other, and totally maybe about 20 farms. So when the combine harvester came, the whole village moved from one end to the other through the 3 villages, through the 20 farms, and everything was done as a team. I think the Philippines have a similar word for that idea. You know, even like the Amish out in Philadelphia, they do that. They do everything together. Like they move sheds together, and they go inside them, lift them, and move them. So that whole idea of community, and yeah, I remember. So I came back. I was born and reared in London for 12 years, and then we came back to the west of Ireland, and back then there was zero crime, and everybody's house was open, and the whole idea of Mi Casa, Tu Casa was genuinely true, that anybody could wander into your home, you know, go to the stove, you know, help themselves to a bowl of soup. It was almost like, yes, this is my house, and your house is my house is your house. I think probably television was probably the first, you know, beginning of the end of that whole, you know, instead of getting fulfillment from interaction with others, it was for interaction with the TV screen, I think.
It's interesting.
But where I live here in Donegal, which is the northwest of Ireland, we still have that here. We still have that sense of community. And, you know, like I'll give an example. So a local fisherman here got drowned, and he left a wife and 5 young kids, and we all banded together and built a home for her, made sure she was financially secure. And then, as happens in Ireland, a lot of people in the 50s and 60s, because Ireland was basically a third world country, had very little money back then, and people had to immigrate to survive. And what would happen then is that they just get stuck and never come home. So we built around the Dublin Marathon, raised £1,000 back then, 1996. So we built 10 units. Anybody that was from this area and it was now retired in either Glasgow or London or somewhere could come home to experience the community and say.
Nice, amazing. And are you religious now?
No, I was never religious. I was always spiritual. In fact, as a 4 or 5 year old, I remember, or even maybe a bit later, 6, 7 year old, when we would be going to church to get, you know, whatever confirmed or first communion, or so back then the Catholic Church, the mass was in Latin, and the priest didn't actually face the audience. He had his back to the audience. He faced the altar, and his back to the congregation. So there was no connection between the priest. And the story back then was that the only way you could communicate with God was through the priest. The bullshit story they told you is that God speaks Latin, we speak Latin, you don't. So you got to go through us to that. So I remember them telling us this, you know, when they were preparing us for confession. And as you know, I'd be saying, bullshit. Yeah, so I've never been religious. I've always been spiritual.
Was that because obviously Ireland's, that sort of part of Ireland must be quite strongly religious? Was that
very religious, but very much in a controlling fashion? Like, you know, 99% of people would go to Sunday mass, and it was almost like it was, you know, sacrilege not to go to mass. And then in the 80s and 90s, there was a whole scandal about the priest and all the pedophilia. As they say in the, you know, what do they say? When a manager loses the dressing room, he loses the respect of the team. So the priests lost the room. They started all that sort of shenanigans. The Irish state and the Catholic Church were very much hand in glove. They controlled everything. So in the village, the policeman, the parish priest were in cahoots to so much extent of if a priest abused a child and the child, told the parent and the parent went to the police would say,
Wind your neck in.
it's never going to go anywhere. So
Wow. Blimey.
go home and beat your child for telling lies.
And when a lot of people ask me, they're like, what's the difference between spirituality and religion? What's your answer to that? Or what's your thought?
Religion is the middleman, so you can cut out the middleman and deal direct.
Nice. Yeah, I like it. Okay, cool. Well, we are really here to talk about money. And how did you get from, sounds like you were stepping into the spiritual world first, and then you came to money, or?
Yeah, well, through the usual. I worked as a student, as I said, in the salmon farming business. I ended up being manager, ended up getting preferential shareholding in it. And back in the 80s, when everybody was struggling, I mean, property had a big collapse in 87, 88. Stock market collapsed in 87, Black Monday. So as an innocent, 21, 22-year-old, I had no clue why the bank manager was greeting me with a glass of champagne and take me into the back of the bank and show me how this brand new ATM machine worked and how we loaded with money. So I was getting the red carpet treatment in my local bank branch here. I couldn't understand why, because I was in a very lucrative industry. You could produce salmon for £3 a kilo, sell it for £5 a kilo, and nobody had money back then. So I was going up every quarter to the bank with my big dividend check, and couldn't understand why the bank manager was so happy to see me. So yeah, I was totally oblivious. I was totally sucked into the whole husbandry side of salmon farming, and it was only when the company got bought out by Norwegians and we just had a day job then, we didn't have our shareholding, didn't have dividends. I started to look around and say, right, I need to be in business for myself. And I looked at the statistics of business, small to medium enterprise statistics here in Ireland, which is global. I mean, famously, Tony Robbins will have a room of 10,000 people in the Excel Centre in London, and he'll say, stand up if you're in business for yourself, and stay standing if you've been in business more than 5 years, 10 years. And again, it's a high failure rate. Like 90% of businesses fail after 10 years. And 90% of businesses don't even get to $1 million turnover. And those that do get to $1 million turnover, the average profit is 5%. So I did the maths. It says, right, if I'm 90%, part of the 10% is successful, part of the 10% of that 10% that even does $1 million turnover, I do a 5% margin, I'm going to make 50 grand, and I'm going to bust my ass to do that. But I'm making a 50 grand salary in the fish farm, so why would I bother? So I parked the idea of being in business for myself until I came across Tony Robbins and did the Tony Robbins fireworks seminar. And then we got upsold to Wealth Mastery, where 24 of the wealthiest people of the planet distill their decades of experience into 6 long Tony Robbins days. Their basic message was, we came from nothing, we figured it out, there is a system, learn the system, master your emotions, form mastermind groups, focus on wealth creation rather than income generation. So that's how the journey began. So I did it part-time alongside the day job for 2 years, and after 2 years I was making more money than the day job. So I left the day job, and I live in a very small remote community, and everybody knew I had a big salary, company car, pension, blah, 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 and they thought it was like crazy abandoning this to do what? And I said, well, I could make more money trading the stock market than doing a day job. And they said, well, how does it work? And I said, why don't we form an investment club? Back even before the euro, it was the Irish currency back then was the punt. 55 punts. Punt, yeah, we were called, that was our currency, the punt.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, take a punt. The punt, we did 55 punts a month each into a kitty, and we said we're going to need five punts each to buy some decent research, like charting software, decent analysis. And then we started to do very well in the market. Just basically doing what Tony Robbins' people told us to do. Number one, make sure it's a rock solid quality company. Similar stuff that Warren Buffett does. Make sure it's good value. And then we learned how to rent it. We learned how to sell call options to collect income, sell put options to collect income, get dividends, use that income to reinvest to buy more shares. More shares is more income is more shares. So we were able to create compound interest wheels within the platform. So even though the market collapsed in 2000 due to the dot-com bubble, if you study history, March 2000, the NASDAQ peaked to 5,400, and everyone was saying, hold on to your hats, it'll be 7,000 by Christmas. By Christmas, it was 1,200. It dropped 80% during the dot-com bubble burst. Yet we were still making money. Why? Because we were value investors. Money was leaving the risky stuff and going back to value-based companies, and we had already proactively bought them. So because we did well, then just by word of mouth around Ireland, because everybody knows everybody, we just started to build investment clubs in various towns and counties around Ireland. So built about 100 investment clubs. And then one member was from Australia in a club in Cork, said, I'm going back to Australia, let's take this to Australia. So yeah, we've built investment clubs now in 50 different countries, in 15 different languages. And we can walk into any town and village in the world, set up an investment club, provided they apply our system, we can actually do better than Warren Buffett. Because Warren can only do buy and hold and a bit of dividends. We do buy and hold, dividends, and call options and put options. So we have that.
And then you use compound interest to
Yes.
grow the pot.
Yes. Yeah. You end up owning your shares for free after 3 years. So think of it as you buy a house, you put in tenants, you collect rent, and you've collected so much rent, you've covered the initial cost of that first house. And then you buy a second house with rent this time. Now you've got two houses producing rent, then a third house. So imagine 20 years from now, you've got 10 houses, but you only bought the first one. The other 9 houses were financed by the rent from the constantly reinvesting your rent to buy another house and reinvest your rent to buy another house.
So it takes around 3 years to get the original pounds.
Yeah,
back.
if you spend $20 on a share, typically between the call options, the put options, and the dividends, you will have the price $20 back in income. So now the underlying asset has been de-risked.
And
that's what we do in 3 years or sometimes less. We've we produce dashboards for our clubs, and in those dashboards we say, there's all the shares you own, and here's what percentage you've got back in income that you've actually now successfully de-risked the underlying asset, because the underlying asset is free. I'll give you a real example. Warren Buffett spent 7 years accumulating 9% of Coca-Cola. By the way, I've been to 10 of Warren Buffett's AGMs in America in the last 20 years. We're massive fans of Warren. But Warren did a 7-year program to accumulate 9% of Coca-Cola, up to 400 million shares of Coca-Cola. So he now owns 9% of Coca-Cola. It cost him $1.3 billion to buy 9% of Coca-Cola. Today, if you add up all of his dividends, he's got $13 billion back in dividends. So right now, he's got 400 million shares, and Coca-Cola currently pays you $2.50 per share. So $2.50 times 400 million shares is $1 billion. So he's making $1 billion a year now in dividends. So in one of his letters to his shareholders about 5 years ago, he said, my secret sauce is buy a strong company when it's great value, use the dividends to end up owning the share for free, and then just reinvest the dividends to buy more assets. So it's simple, but it's not fast. It needs to. What's another saying? Warren Buffett says the best time to plant an oak tree was 20 years ago, but if you didn't plant it 20 years ago, plant it today.
Yeah. I use that one a lot. Amazing. And so, why have an investment club versus just learning this on your own and doing it yourself? Yeah,
there's power. And I'll give you an example. Once I went to a management course when I was working in the fish farm, and the guy was about 20 of us in the room, and he said, right, get a piece of paper out and write down all the brands of toothpaste, like Colgate. So each of us individuals could only come up with 3 or 4 brands of toothpaste each. But collectively as a room, we came up with like 50 different brands. So that's the power of a team. So that's why an investment club is way more powerful than investing on your own for that reason alone. Secondly, you're leveraging other people's time and other people's money. Instead of if you're an investment club of 20 people and you put in an hour a month's work in, the group is actually putting in 20 hours. So you're benefiting from the other 19 hours of research. From a tax perspective as well, Ben, it's the next best thing to a pension. A pension is tax-free. The next best thing is investment club, because investment club is treated as it's like a collective, like a crowdfunding type thing. But think of it in corporate terms. If you invest, say, 10 grand in a club, you are effectively doing a director's loan to that club. And if you get 1,000 back, you haven't created a tax event yet. You've only got repayment of a director's loan. So if you put 10,000 in and you take 10,000 out, you haven't created a tax event. You take 11,000 out, you've now created a 1,000 profit, then you would pay tax on that. So an investment club compared to an individual, if you're an individual trading the market or a corporation, you have to do your returns every year. So that money you're giving to the taxman every year, you're actually keeping that within the club. So it's very powerful to invest as a club rather than as an individual.
And do you need to know how it works if you're joining the club?
No, I mean, it's ideally you would understand that it's not get rich quick, it's get rich steady, but you can be active in the club and learn everything, or you can be passive. So it's very flexible. You can be as active as you want to be, or as passive as you want to be. In my experience, and I've built over, hundreds of investment clubs around the world, it's the 80-20 rule, Ben. 20% of people are very keen, 80% are happy to be passive passengers on the bus. And that's fine, as long as...
if you're active, what are you doing if you're active?
So if you're active, you're probably thinking, I want to open up my own account as well and eventually learn how to trade my own money. And so you're saying, well, can I be the trader for the club? Can I be the treasurer? Can I learn all the nuts and bolts of how this works? Like, how do you transfer money? How do you change from British pounds to dollars? And how do you get that out to American? All these little nuts and like the cogs of the machine. I want to be the treasurer for 12 months. And now I want to be the trader for 12 months. Because you just learn how to do it for yourself eventually.
How many roles are there in the club?
Yeah, so it'll be chairman, secretary, treasurer, and typically 2 or 3 traders. Depends on the size of the club. There's like a working committee, and the bigger the club, the bigger the committee.
And what's sort of like the minimum number of investors you need to start a club?
3, and you have a club.
Oh.
It's a legal entity. Once it has a chairperson, treasurer, secretary, it can start a club.
Okay, cool.
So within BIP, who you and I are members of, we've got 40 members. I think up to 42 members now, both past and present, are members of Investment Club, and we've turned 600,000 into almost $1 million now. Some members only put in 100 months. Some members put in 250 months. Some members put in like as and when they've got spare cash flow in their business. And the beauty about an investment club is you're not locked in. And there's no penalty for leaving early. It's just, if you need to leave, we understand. But if you can afford to stay, the longer you stay, the more the compound interest will kick in. Compound interest is like a sleeping giant. If you look at a 5-year window of time, you're going to get most of your compound interest in the 5th year. If you look at a 10-year window of time, you're going to get most of your compound interest in year 9 and year 10. For those of it, people listen to this podcast, if you play golf, Ben and I play golf, and if he's very good and I'm no good, and we have a bet, 10 pennies on the first hole, and he wins because he's better than me. In my attempt to get my money back, I'll say double or quits. We'll do 20 cents on the next hole, and then 40 cents, and then 80 cents, and then 160. If Ben leaves the golf course on the 10th hole, because this is no fun, he keeps beating me, he only walks away with £5. If he stays on the golf course for another 8 holes, he walks away with 26,000. That's the power of compound interest. So there's more money in holes 17, 18 than there is in the first 16 holes.
Nice. Good. Okay. What else do I need to know about investment clubs?
Yeah, the most important thing is to master your emotions.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, Sir John Templeton was one of our lecturers at that time, was the 11th richest man in the world. And he said, when you look at the stock market, it's just a reflection of human emotion. When things are low, everybody's gripped in fear and they're not buying when they should be buying. And when things are high, they're buying because they have a fear of missing out, FOMO. This thing is doing so well, I better get onto it when it's doing well. So that's why most people do the wrong thing, do the right thing at the wrong time.
Why do you help? How do you help with that? How do you help people master?
So we teach people to learn pattern recognition. Like, so if you think of it, let's say, pick something like, I don't know, Microsoft. There's 8 billion people, well, almost 9 billion people on the planet now. How many people do you think actively are interested in and participate in the buying and selling of micro shares every day? It might be a small group of maybe 200,000 people. So when you look at a graph of a share going up and down, you're just looking at human beings making emotional decisions of fear and greed. And humans are very predictable. I just did a 2-day seminar, and I've been doing seminars for years, over 20 years now. Wherever Ben Price sits in day 1 in that seminar, he's going to sit in that seat day 2. That's a predictable pattern. And in fact, he'll get upset if somebody's sitting in the seat day 2. So all you're just looking at human beings. So they do. And then it's, if you want to go down the rabbit hole, it's actually down to do with Fibonacci and the golden mean ratio. So Fibonacci was a famous monk about 600 years ago who looked at breeding rabbits. You've heard the saying, breeding like rabbits. And instead of having like 2 parents and then 4 children and then 8 grandchildren and 16 great-grandchildren, it's not that relationship. It's like 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 2 is 5, 5 plus 3 is 8. So there's a sacred number, a Fibonacci series. So a British accountant called Elliot, in 1925, as a chartered accountant, he says, I wonder if that Fibonacci stuff applies to the stock market, because again, it's human beings. And in 1925, he found it out. It's called the Elliott wave. So you get 3 rolls up, and then the pattern collapses, and then there's a new pattern. It might be 3 rolls down or 3 rolls sideways. So that research sat gathering dust from 1925 to 1994. A guy called Robert Preckner came across it and said, I'm going to enter into a trading competition in the US to see if this works. And he won 7 years in a row. So he's one of the guys interviewed by Tony Robbins. And he says, yeah, look, when you can identify the pattern, it is a repeatable pattern, and you can use it to make decisions. So to answer your question, we teach people pattern recognition. And interestingly, children see the patterns immediately. A third of adults see it immediately when you show it to them. A third of them, you kind of have to show it to them many, many times, but they eventually get it. And a third of people, No matter how many times you show it to them, they just don't see the patterns.
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, they tend to be the engineers, the analytical people, the people that have dumped so much data into their brain, they can't see the creative side of it. They can't see the images and see the
Right.
patterns. But what's really exciting, Ben, we've just trained ChatGPT. We gave
Oh, yeah.
ChatGPT, here's a perfect looking chart with the bottom, because ideally the best time to buy is the bottom of the third row. And so we've got a bit of software that scans 8,000 companies. And we
Yeah.
taught it to recognize that pattern,
Oh.
to break a visual pattern into formulas, put it back into ChatGPT. They wrote the formula, put it back into the chart platform, and now we can, just like that, we can scan 8,000 companies and find the ideal patterns.
And so when somebody recognizes the pattern, what does that do for them emotionally? Because you said master your emotions first.
Yeah, so it gives people, stacks the odds in their favor, because what goes up will surely come down. What goes down will go up, as long as it's a strong company and stays in business. For every winter there will be a summer, for every summer there will be a winter. So you teach people to recognize that this business is seasonal. There's good times and bad times. You just got to, I always say to people, it's like, I don't surf. I've never surfed. But imagine if I went surfing in a really strong sea, I would get clobbered. But someone who's got experience and they can read the waves, they'll just ride the waves. And that's the stock market, is you got to learn to ride the waves.
It just gives people confidence,
Yeah,
basically. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
What they're doing.
That along with analyzing the company to make sure it's financially very strong. Look, we use a company called Valueline, which looks at a 15-year history and a 5-year future. So we're looking at a 20-year window of time over a company. And so we know that the company is rock solid, has been around for decades, and will probably be around for decades to come. Very strong.
Why is money why is money such a forbidden topic for us to talk about? I know it's not for you, but
I think it's to do with the emotions of it, just, and the brainwashing. Religion is a big culprit, especially the Catholic Church.
yeah, we've done both in this podcast so far.
Again?
And we've done both in this podcast so far.
Yeah.
Money
So
and religion.
we're
Do you think
programmed.
the religion has an effect on money, or
100%.
right?
It teaches people, certainly the Catholic Church does, teaches people to have negative associations with the accumulation of wealth.
Okay, how's that happened?
I think it's a sort of something about, there was a quote like the eye of the needle, or so the camel can't get through the eye of the needle, or something about that. And it's like, if you're wealthy, you can't get to heaven type story,
But give us your money, give the church your money.
Yeah, that's why the Vatican is the Catholic Church is the richest. The Vatican is the richest entity in the world. I'll never forget. It's like I have a son and daughter, and I taught them at age 6 and age 8 how to trade the market. And my son got it straight away at age 6, and my daughter kind of struggled with it. And then she said, "I give up. I'll give my money to my son, her brother, and we just split the profit 50-50." So she said to him once, "You're like the Vatican Bank. All the money goes in and never comes out again."
She said you're like the Vatican Bank.
Yeah, all the money goes in, but nothing comes out.
So she never got her money back.
No. She was just talking about she was talking about how her brother was tight with money. He never spent money.
Oh.
But in fairness to him, he now and again he used to treat himself. So he's been trading real money since he's 8 years of age. So once he treated himself to a large flat screen TV, so could he play, gaming with his buddies. Then he did a set of golf clubs, and then when he was in university, he bought a brand new Volkswagen Golf when his fellow students could hardly afford a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Because he'd been investing since then. And when he walked out of college, there was 26 people went for a top job, all, banking careers and IFA and QFA and all that. He walked in straight into the job because they knew when they interviewed him, he had 14 years of real experience in the stock market, not reading in a book type experience. So he's over in Malta now. He's over in Malta now. He's part of a team that manages 5 billion in Malta.
5 billion. Yeah, wow. And so you can learn this at a real young age, because I've got sons now.
Yes, the earlier the better. My son started at 6. So I've an interesting video of a girl that started at 11, and now she's very, very wealthy. Yeah, the earlier the better. Warren Buffett started when he was 11.
Right.
With $110, and here he is today. Now his fund is worth about 800 billion, and he's worth about 200 billion. I started in 1942, right in the middle of World War II, when everybody thought the world was going to end. He had the balls as 11-year-old to save up $10 from delivering newspapers as a summer job.
So you can just start with anything from anywhere.
With our clubs, you can start as little as 100 a month.
What do you have to say about crypto and people investing in crypto? And...
Wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. In fact, every year, like I say, we go to the Warren Buffett AGMs. Every year, Warren or Charlie would get asked about crypto. Every year, they'd have a different way of saying it's a load of rubbish. One year, Warren Buffett said, it's all on record, it's on the YouTube videos. He said, if you give me all the Bitcoin in the world, I wouldn't give you $25 for it. And then another year, Charlie Munger said, Just because your relative sells turds, you don't have to sell turds.
Turds.
Turds. And
What?
it wasn't an Irish turd; it was a turd. So yeah, their story is eventually the governments of the world will have their own official cryptocurrency, and once they have that, they will make every other one illegal. So they'll all go to zero. You can't beat the man.
Yeah.
We're in a
Well,
matrix,
it's
whether
already
we
kind
like
of
it.
happening, isn't it? Isn't there already a US?
Yeah, they're looking at some sort of digital backed currency, and it's all part of a big game to socially control us. Yeah, if they control the money, they can control us. So yeah, but if you can't beat them, just join them, Ben. Just figure out what they're doing. Like everything we do in the investment club, the big banks are doing. We're just taking, what do they call, like Wall Street to Main Street. You can just copy paste what they're doing.
Yeah, fair enough. Cool. All right, lovely. Well, thank you for your
You're
time.
very welcome.
What if people want to learn about investment clubs? How do they go about doing that?
Yeah, so they can reach out and they can get in touch with me. My email is Owen Owen@ticn.com, or if they want, they can connect with me on Instagram. It's called Why Wealth. Or if they want to go on WhatsApp, I've no problem giving out my number. They can send me a WhatsApp on +353 86 806 8008.
Nice, thanks, Owen. And your mission to spread this to as many people
Yeah,
as
so
possible.
Warren Buffett, who's our hero, has created almost 6 million millionaires in 60 years. We want to
Wow.
create 1 million millionaires in the next 30 years because, as I said, the market doesn't average 10%. He doesn't average 20%. We do an average 30% because we've got that extra tool that he doesn't have because he's too big to do call options and put options. So yeah, we're on a mission to help as many people reach financial freedom, and not for the sake of the money, because I firmly believe everybody comes into this planet with a soul contract. You have you're following your soul contract, and so many people don't get to do the important work because they get stuck in the matrix, they get stuck in the day job, and that's why I'm passionate about what I do, because it allowed me to free myself from the matrix, and so we'd like to help a lot of people do the work that they came to do.
I heard the other day that the Romans, when they celebrated a birthday, would celebrate the uniqueness and the inner genius of the individual as their birthday. I thought that was nice. I like that.
We're all unique. None of us. No two fingerprints are the same. We're very blessed to be on Earth. The odds of us coming here were very slim. There's loads of souls out there queuing, trying to get in. So if you got in, you're blessed. And your job is to make life easier for other people. As Emerson said, the definition of success is to know somebody else breathe easy because you breathed.
And not spend your whole life worrying about money.
Not at all. No, just it's an exchange of energy. If you add value, the table of life will pay you in the direct proportion of the value you add. So the reason why Warren Buffett is so wealthy is because he's helped 6 million people become millionaires.
And the best way to add value is to do the thing you're supposed to be here to do.
However, it is incumbent upon you, because we're trapped in a physical world, to take care of the physical needs and have enough money to take care of those, so that you have the headspace to pursue what you're supposed to do.
Awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, just to really emphasize to people that anybody can do this. I've helped thousands of people from 50 different countries in 15 different languages. So everything is learnable and everything is doable. You just need somebody to show you how to do it.
Great. Awesome. Thanks so much, Owen.
You're very welcome.
Much love. Bye-bye.
Yeah, take care.
There we go.